July 23rd. Tonight we're going to be reading from 2nd Chronicles 8:11 through 10:19, Romans 8:9 through 25, Psalms 18:16 through 30, and Proverbs 19:26. Every night we do the Lord's Prayer, so if you will join in with me, I greatly appreciate it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory forever and ever. Amen. 2nd Chronicles 8:11 through 10:19. Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter from the city of David to a house built especially for her, because he said, "My wife cannot live in the house of David, king of Israel, for the areas in which the chest of God has entered are sacred." Then Solomon offered whole burnt offerings to God at the altar of God that he had built in front of the temple porch. He kept to the regular schedule of worship set down by Moses: Sabbaths, new moons, and 3 annual feasts of unraised bread, Passover, weeks, Pentecost, and booths. He followed this practice of his father David in setting up groups and priests carrying out the work of worship, with the Levites assigned to lead the sacred music for praising God and to assist the priest in the daily worship. He assigned security guards to be on duty at each gate. That's what David did. That's what David, the man of God, had ordered. The king's directions to the priests and Levites and the financial stewards were kept right down to the fine print. No innovations, including the treasuries. All that Solomon set out to do, from the groundbreaking of the temple of God to its finish, was now complete. Then Solomon went to Ezion Geber and Elathon and Elath on the coast of Edom. Hiram set his ships, and with the veteran sailors, joined by Solomon's men, they sailed to Ophir in East Africa, loaded on 15 tons of gold, and brought it back to King Solomon. The Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's reputation and came to Jerusalem to put his reputation to the test, asking all the tough questions. She made a showy entrance, an impressive retinue, retinue of attendants. Another word I'd never said in my entire life. And a retinue of attendants and camels loaded with perfume and much gold and precious stones. She had emptied her heart to Solomon, taking out everything she cared about, talking about everything she cared about. And Solomon answered her everything she put on him. Nothing stumped him. When the Queen of Sheba experienced for herself Solomon's wisdom and saw with her own eyes the palace he had built, the meals that were served, the impressive array of court officials and sharply dressed waiters, the cupbearers, and the elaborate worship extravagant with whole burnt offerings at the temple of God, it all took her breath away. She said to the king, "It's all true. Your reputation for accomplishment and wisdom that reached all the way to my country is confirmed. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it for myself. They didn't exaggerate. Such wisdom and elegance, far more than I could ever have imagined. Lucky the men and women who work for you, getting to be around you every day and hear your wise words firsthand. And blessed be your God, who has taken such a liking to you, making you king. Clearly, God's love for Israel is behind this, making you king to keep a just order and nurture a God-pleasing people." So then gave the king 4.5 tons of gold and sack after sack of spices and precious stones. There hasn't been a cargo of spices like the shipload of Queen of Sheba brought to King Solomon. The ships of Hiram are imported gold from Ophir, along with fragrant sandalwood and expensive gems. The kings used the sandalwood for fine cabinetry in the temple of God and the royal palace, and for making harps and dulcimers for the musicians. Nothing like the shipment of sandalwood has ever been since. King Solomon, for his part, gave the Queen of Sheba all her heart's desire, everything she asked for. She took away more than she brought. Satisfied, she returned home with her train of servants. Solomon received 25 tons of gold annually. That was above and beyond the taxes and profit on trade with the merchants and traders. All kings of Arabia and various and assorted governors also brought silver and gold to Solomon. King Solomon crafted 200 body-length shields of hammered gold, about 15 pounds of gold to each shield, and about 300 small shields about half that size. He stored the shields in the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king made a massive throne of ivory with a veneer of gold. The throne had 6 steps leading up to it, with an attached footstool of gold. The armrests of each side were flanked by lions. Lions, 12 of them, were placed on either end of the 6 steps. There was no throne like it in any of the kingdom. King Solomon's chalices and tankards were made of gold, and all the dinnerware and serving utensils in the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Nothing was made of silver. Silver was considered common and cheap in the time of Solomon. The king's ships, manned by Hiram's sailors, made a round trip to Tarshish every 3 years, returning with a cargo of gold, silver, and ivory, apes, and peacocks. Apes. Okay, next that means apes. King Solomon was richer and wiser than all the kings on earth. He surpassed them all. Kings came from all over the world to be with Solomon and to get into the wisdom God has given him. Everyone who came brought gifts, artifacts of gold and silver, fashionable robes and gowns, and the latest in weapons, exotic spices, horses and mules, parades of visitors year after year. Solomon collected horses and chariots. He had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots and 12,000 horsemen and barracks in the chariot cities of Jerusalem. He ruled over all the kings of the river Euphrates in the east, throughout the Philistine country, and as far west of the border of Egypt. The king made silver as common as rocks and cedar as common as fig trees in the lowland hills. He carried on a brisk horse trading business with Egypt and other places. The rest of Solomon's life, the rule from start to finish, one can read in the records of Nathan the prophet. The prophecy of Hajjah of Sheol and the visions of Iddo, the seer, concerning Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Solomon ruled in Jerusalem over all of Israel for 40 years. Solomon died and was buried in the city of David with his father. His son Rehoboam was the next king. Rehoboam traveled to Shechem, where all the Israel had gathered to inaugurate him as king. Jeroboam was then in Egypt, where he had taken asylum from King Solomon. When he got the report that Solomon's death, he came back, summoned by Israel. Jeroboam and all Israel went to Rehoboam and said, "Your father made life hard for us, worked our fingers to the bone. Give us a break, lighten us up, and we'll willingly serve you." "Give me," said Rehoboam, "3 days to think it over, then come back." So the people left. King Rehoboam talked it over with the elders who had advised his father when he was alive. "What's your counsel? How do we suggest that I answer the people?" They said, "If you will be a servant to this people, be considerate of their needs, and respond with compassion, work things out with them, they'll end up doing anything for you." But he rejected the counsel of the elders and asked the young men he'd grown up with, who were now currying his favor, "What do you think? What should I say to these people who are saying, 'Give us a break from your father's harsh ways, lighten up on us'?" The young Turks he'd grown up with said, "These people are who complain, 'Your father was too hard on us, lighten up.' Well, tell them this: my little finger is thicker than my father's wrist. If you think life under my father was hard, well, you haven't seen the half of it. My father thrashed you with whips. I'll beat you bloody with chains." 3 days later, Jeroboam and the people showed up, just as Rehoboam had directed when he said, "Give me 3 days to think it over and come back." The king's answer was harsh and rude. He spurned the counsel of the elders, went with the advice of the younger set. "If you think life under my father was hard, you haven't seen the half of it. My father thrashed you with whips. I'll beat you bloody with chains." Rehoboam turned a deaf ear to the people. God was behind all this, confirming the messages that he had given to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah of Sheol. When all Israel realized that the king hadn't listened to the words they'd said, they stood up to him and said, "Get lost, David. We've had it with you, son of Jesse. Let's get out of here, Israel, and fast. From now on, David, mind your own business." And with that, they left. Rehoboam continued to rule only those who lived in the town of Judah. When King Rehoboam next sent out Adram, head of the workforce, the Israelites ganged up on him, pelted him with stones, and killed him. King Rehoboam jumped in his chariot and escaped to Jerusalem just fast as he could. Israel had been in rebellion against the Davidic dynasty ever since. 2 Chronicles 8:11 through 10:19. The breakdown is: King Solomon reaches his peak in wisdom, wealth, and influence. The Queen of Sheba visits and is amazed by God's blessing of Solomon. However, after Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam rejects wise counsel and chooses harsh leadership. The prideful decision causes the king to divide, the 10 tribes breaking away from Jeroboam. The lesson: without wisdom and humility build unity, while pride and stubbornness create division. Romans 8:9-25. But if God himself has taken up residence in your life, you can hardly be thinking more of yourself than of him. I've been guilty of that in the past. Anyone, of course, who has not welcomed this invisible but clearly present God, the Spirit of Christ, who won't know what you're talking about. But for you who welcome him in whom he dwells, even though you still experience all the limitations of sin, you yourself experience life on God's terms. It stands to reason, doesn't it, that if the alive and present God who raises Jesus from the dead moves in your life, he'll do the same thing in you that he did in Jesus, bringing you alive to himself. When God lives and breathes in you, as he does and surely as he did in Jesus, you are delivered from the dead life. With his spirit living in you, your body will be alive as Christ's. So don't you see that we don't owe this old do-it-yourself life one red cent? There's nothing in it for us, nothing at all. The best thing to do is to give it decent burial and get on with your new life. God's spirit beckons. There are things to do and places to go. The resurrection life you receive from God is not timid, grave tending life. It's adventurous, expectant, greeting God with childlike, what next, Papa? Childlike faith, too. God's spirit touches your spirits and God's spirit touches your spirits and confirms who we really are. We know who he is, and we know who we are, father and children, and we know who we're going to get what's coming to us. An unbelievable inheritance. We go through exactly what Christ goes through. If we go through the hard times with him, then we're certainly going to go through the good times with him. Amen. That's why I don't think there's any comparison between the present hard times and the coming good times. Highlight. That's why I don't think there's a comparison between the comparison between the present hard times and the coming good times. The created world itself can hardly wait for what's next. Everything in creation is being more or less held back. God reigns in until both creation and all creatures are ready and can be released at the same moment in the glorious times ahead. Meanwhile, the joyful anticipation deepens. All around us, we observe a pregnant creation. The difficult times of pain throughout the world are simply birth pangs. Birth pangs? I thought it was birth pains. Birth pangs. I'll definitely have to look that up. But it's not only around us, it's within us. The Spirit of God is arousing us within. We're also feeling the birth pangs, it says it again. These sterile and barren bodies of yours are yearning for full deliverance. This is why waiting does not diminish us any more than waiting diminishes a pregnant mother. We are enlarged in the waiting. Well, we of course don't see what is enlarging us, but the longer we wait, the longer we become, and the more joyful our expectancy. Breakdown of Romans 8:9-25, Paul reminds us that if the Spirit of God lives in them, they belong to Christ. Though our bodies are still subject to death, the Spirit gives life and guarantees our future resurrection. We are adopted as God's children and heirs with Christ. Present sufferings are real, but they are insignificant compared to the glory that awaits us. Christians live with hope and patiently wait for the full redemption of God has promised. Psalms 18:16-30. But me he caught, reached all the way from sky to sea. He pulled me out of the ocean of hate and enemy chaos, the void in which I was drowning. They hit me when I was down, but God stuck by me. He stood me up in the wide open field. I stood there saved, surprised to be loved. God made my life complete when I placed all the places before him. When I got my act together, he gave me a fresh start. Now I'm alert to God's ways. I don't take God for granted. Every day I review the way he works. I try not to miss a trick. I feel put back together and I'm waiting while I'm watching my step. God rewrote the text of my life when I opened the book of my heart to his eyes. The good people taste your goodness. The whole people taste your health. The true people taste your truth. The bad ones only the bad ones can't figure you out. You take the side of the down and out, but the stuck up you take down a notch. I've been there. Suddenly, God, you flood light my life. I'm blazing with glory, God's glory. I smash the bands of marauders. I vault the highest fences. What a God! His road stretches straight and smooth. Every God direction is a road tested. Everyone who runs toward him makes it. Breakdown of Psalms 18, 16 through 30. David praises God for rescuing him from the overwhelming trouble. He recognizing that God is his deliverer, strength, and refuge. David declares that God's ways are perfect and his word is proven true. The psalm reminds us that God is faithful to save, protect, and guide those who trust in him, even in the darkest battles. Proverbs 19:26. Kids who lash out against their parents are an embarrassment and disgrace. The prodigal. He who does he who does violence to his father and chases away his mother is a son who brings shame and reproach. The proverb emphasizes honoring parents. A person who mistreats those who care for them demonstrates a lack of character and brings disgrace upon themselves. God values gratitude, respect, and honoring family relationships. Nobody told you today, I love you and I appreciate you. I hope you have a better than good night. We will see you tomorrow. It'll be July 23rd. I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you.